Hello, everyone. In our last lecture, we talked about the revolutions of 1848 and various efforts at overthrowing conservative order across various countries of Europe. In particular, we saw there was efforts in Italy led by liberals and in Germany also led by liberals to try and create a united Italy and united Germany. Those efforts were ultimately unsuccessful, but what we're going to concentrate on today is the successful efforts to actually unite those two countries and then the emergence of Germany and Italy as modern nation states. What we will see that while it was liberals and Republicans who attempted to bring about unification in 1848, what's interesting is that when these countries actually are united in the 1860s and 1870s, it's in the case of Italy, it's slightly more moderate liberal forces, and in Germany, it's going to be unmistakably conservative forces that actually help lead unification. So we'll begin by looking at Italy. What exactly was Italy in the 19th century? As we mentioned in the previous class, it was divided into a series of kingdoms. Italy had once been united as a single country under Roman rule. That is to say that there was at least a historical tradition of Italy being a single united geographic unit, but in reality being divided politically for over 1,000 years. And I'll show you guys a map in a moment just to show you the various kingdoms, but Italy was politically very divided and had been divided for a long, long time, albeit with an ancient and glorious tradition of unification under Rome. So parts of Italy were independent kingdoms. When I show you the map in a moment, you'll see there was Piedmont, Sardinia, was a large, relatively wealthy kingdom in the northwest. The Kingdom of Naples, or the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, was an independent kingdom in the south. And in the other parts of the centre of Italy, we had the Papal States that were united under the rule of the Pope, and then the Austrian government controlled parts of northern Italy, especially Lombardy and Venetia. Economically, Italy was quite divided. There was a sharp divide between northern Italy, which tended to be more industrial, tended to be wealthier, tended to be more urban, and the south, which tended to be more agricultural, certainly was a lot poorer than the north. And these economic differences were reinforced by pretty strong actual cultural divisions, especially in terms of language. Today, when we talk about Italy, we assume there's a unified Italian language. That really didn't exist in 19th century Europe. The various languages spoken in Italy were, we might broadly say, dialects of one another, but those languages spoken in Sicily were pretty much mutually unintelligible to the dialects spoken in northern Italy and vice versa. And that's actually still true to this day as well, albeit today there is a common Italian language as well. So economically divided, politically divided, culturally divided. The first efforts at creating a united Italy, we already saw in an earlier class. Giuseppe Mazzini was an Italian Republican who was committed to, his lifelong ambition was to unify Italy, and to that end he established the Young Italy Society in 1834. He had participated in various efforts at revolt and revolution in order to kickstart a united Italy. Ideally, Mazzini wanted a united republic, although in 1848, he had given clear signs that he was willing to accept perhaps even a constitutional monarchy. His overriding ambition was to unite Italy, and the political system afterwards he could be a little more flexible on. So Mazzini was the poster child for Italian unification for much of the 19th century. And as we saw in our last class, there were efforts to try and unite Italy in 1848. Initially, Piedmont, Sardinia, its king Charles Albert had tried to conquer Italy and bring it under his rule. There was also the establishment of a Roman Republic in the south, which is what this picture is representing here, the celebration of the Roman Republic. But neither of these campaigns succeeded. So while the effort to unite Italy in 1848 had failed, it still remained a dream of many Italians that the various states in Italy could be brought together as a single nation state. This is a map of Italy in the 1850s. You see here in the northwest we have Piedmont, Sardinia. Austria controls the territories in yellow. There's a few small kingdoms, Duchy of Parma, Duchy of Modena in the centre. Then we have the Papal States, governed by the Pope. And then finally in the south, the large conservative kingdom of the two Sicilies, the Kingdom of Naples or the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. So what is going to kickstart this unification for Italy? How will unification be achieved? The key, I want to go back 1 second, excuse me, just pay attention. If you look again at Piedmont, Sardinia, if you look at the territories on the west, Savoy and Nice, keep those in mind because they are the one part of this map that are actually not going to end up as part of the Italian state, and we'll see why. So, Piedmont, Sardinia was a kingdom in northwest Italy, a monarchy. Charles Albert was a king in 1848. He abdicated in favour of his son, Victor Emmanuel, in 1849. And in 1852, Victor Emmanuel appointed the man pictured here, Camillo di Cavour, the Count di Cavour, as his prime minister. So Cavour wanted to, like Mazzini, he also wanted to see united Italy. And actually, as a young man, Cavour had been a Republican. He had been something of an admirer of Mazzini, but over time, he began to change his political stripes and believed that Italian unification would be better served if it took place under a constitutional monarchy. So he rejected the kind of romantic republicanism of Mazzini as he got older. Indeed, in the early 1850s, when he learned that Mazzini was planning a revolution in the Austrian provinces of Lombardy, he actually tipped off the Austrian authorities and had Mazzini arrested. So over time, we became pretty bitter enemies with Mazzini. Mazzini wanted a unified Italian republic in particular. Cavour wanted a united Italy, but under the rule of Piedmont, Sardinia and its king, Victor Emmanuel. So the language he used to kind of encourage or to stimulate the desire for Italian unification, he talked the language of economic progress, strong monarchy, kind of more a rational argument in favour of unity as opposed to a kind of more romantic argument as put forward by Mazzini. Of course, the main stumbling block to Italian unification was Austria. Austria was obviously a much more powerful country than Piedmont, Sardinia, and it controlled the very wealthy provinces of Lombardy and Venetia. So, to that end, Cavour began looking for allies, and to him the obvious ally was France. That France, he felt that he could trade something with France in order to get French help to defeat Austria in northern Italy and to pave the way for Italian unification. France, when we last talked about France in our last class, we saw that Louis Napoleon Bonaparte had become president. I'll explain in more detail in a later lecture or in our next lecture, but Louis Napoleon had seized power and actually made himself emperor of France by this stage and took the title of Napoleon III. So Cavour reached out to Napoleon III and made a secret deal with him in 1858, basically offering to give Savoy and Nice in western Piedmont, Sardinia to France in return for French help defeating the Austrians. So this was a secret treaty, but Cavour is trying to maneuver a situation in which he can provoke war with Austria, although albeit it's important for him to try and get Austria to attack Piedmont, Sardinia. He managed to do this in 1859. Basically, the Austrian government, which was aware that France and Piedmont, Sardinia were kind of having secret deals about a possible war in Italy, Austria announced it was going to apply conscription to its provinces of Lombardy and Venetia. Cavour responded by offering sanctuary to anyone in Lombardy and Venetia who wanted to escape conscription to come to Piedmont, Sardinia to avoid being drafted into the army, which was a pretty provocative gesture towards the Austrians. And as a result, the Austrians declared war on Piedmont, Sardinia and invaded in 1859. As Cavour had planned, the French rallied to help the Piedmontese. Napoleon III led 100,000 Frenchmen into northern Italy, and initially they had incredible success. The French and the Piedmontese drove the Austrians back, and it was actually at this moment that Napoleon III began to get cold feet. He basically was surprised at how much success the French and Piedmontese had, and became worried that, well, what will happen if Piedmont, Sardinia succeeds and unites all of Italy under its rule? you might argue that Napoleon III's ambitions for the conflict were that Italy would, or Piedmont Sardinia would make some gains, but would still remain a relatively small power. He was somewhat kind of frightened by the fact that Piedmont Sardinia, with French help, looked like it was about to drive the Austrians out of Italy entirely, and that this would open up the road for unification under Piedmont Sardinia. And as Napoleon III reflects upon it, he realized, perhaps I don't want a united, powerful neighbor on my southeastern border with France. And therefore, what he basically did is he decided to, by himself, arrange a peace deal with the Austrians to bring the conflict to an end. So the French essentially bailed on their partnership with the Piedmontese. Cavour was outraged. I mean, the idea was that the conflict would continue until the Austrians had been driven out of Italy, and that was not the case. So what exactly were the terms of the deal? What changed? Let's take a look at this map real quick. So, as I mentioned above in the earlier slide, Savoy and Nice in the northwest of, if we see him here, Savoy and Nice were ceded, given over to France in exchange for French help. The Piedmontese did take Lombardy from the Austrians, and they also acquired some of these independent kingdoms here, Parma, Modena, Tuscany, and added them to their reign. So Piedmont Sardinia did expand as a result of this war, but it did not succeed in conquering all of Italy as it had hoped. The kingdom of the two Sicilies in the south, the Papal States, and the Austrian province of Venetia in the northeast remained. So without French help, the Piedmontese felt they couldn't continue the war without with Austria, so they were forced to stop, albeit having made considerable gains. So by 1860, Piedmont Sardinia has grown, but Italian unification still seems some way off, because in particular with the Austrians, it seems unlikely they'll be defeated without French help, and the French seem unlikely to want to support that campaign because Italian unification, in some regards, they see as a negative.